ranching and cattle can be really bad for the environment. And they can also be really compatible with the environment. It depends where you are.
Why would they be bad?
Well, like in Brazil, people are cutting down rainforest.
Oh, right.
To slash and burn rainforest to put in cattle on soils that are not evolved or meant for grasslands. And, ecologically, it's a double whammy. Mm-hmm. I think the environmental footprint of beef can be improved across the board. Like right now, we feed cows corn, and it's cheaper to ship a cow to a feedlot in Texas and Oklahoma as a 600-pound calf to eat corn for the next year before being slaughtered than it is to ship that much corn to the cows where they live in other parts of the state. So, we're trucking them and putting them on trains and feeding them corn. And so there's a lot of energy that goes into producing a pound of beef and a lot of water that goes into producing a pound of beef. Mm-hmm. But in its simple form, in a grass-fed ecosystem, a cow is very compatible with the environment. And here where we had buffalo or had, where there are historic grasslands and rangelands that supported those kind of wildlife, the cattle can fit right in. And that's the thing. A Florida cattle ranch can have just as much wildlife diversity as a state park or a national park because of the way the cattle are compatible with the landscape.
Wow, that's fascinating.
So that's this picture. This is Apalachicola National Forest, but you have this palmettos and longleaf pine trees and cattle living in that kind of ecosystem. It's not, you have to cut it all down, mow it, fence it. I mean, they can thrive and support the biodiversity and animals like the panther and the black bear and all the different species that live out there.
Yeah, this seems like a much more natural way to have. I mean, you think about where you live and the food you eat. You want to eat food that's native to where you live, and then when you think about what your food eats, you would want your food to eat things that are native to where you live, not things that are being shipped from across the country. I would imagine it would be better for the cow to eat food that was grown there, the grass or whatever is native to the environment it lives in, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, cows are made to eat grass, and we have to give them antibiotics and other things to help them eat the corn.
Right.
But from a production standpoint, they put on weight faster eating corn. There's more nutrients in the corn. They put on more weight. It makes a fattier, more tender cut of beef. So the taste is preferred by American consumers. Grass-fed beef can be drier, more gamey. Mm-hmm. So there's been an appetite in the market that, set it up the way it is. But if we could adapt a taste for grass-fed, locally grown, locally slaughtered beef, then the environmental footprint, I would think drops by orders of magnitude because you're growing an animal that's compatible. You're not having to provide water. You're not having to provide fertilizer, and you're gaining a high quality protein without having to put nearly as many inputs into it as we do the way we grow beef now.
Now, let me ask you this. If I had a cattle ranch and I had a ton of cattle, what would is there, other than the fact that majority of society will buy corn-fed beef because it's fattier and it's more whatever, it's less gamey. Is there any other benefit or is there any other downside to just feeding them grass?
And the downside is you're not going to probably make as much money,
right?
Because they're not going to gain weight as quickly.
Right. Okay.
So you might be able to feed them up to slaughter weight on corn, and half the time they would take to feed them up to that same slaughter weight just eating grass. But there's some,
and I'm sure it's competitive.
It's a competitive market, and it's about the bottom line. But there are people who are doing it. Like I photographed ranches for more than 20 years across Florida now, and you meet some amazing people. But one family I met was raising cows in South Florida, because most of the ranches in Florida, they're called cow-calf operations. And so what we produce is calves. And then once that calf grows up to a certain weight, they get shipped off to the feedlot. And so you sell your calves and then they go to eat corn and eventually be slaughtered. Some people are kind of closing the circle and keeping the whole life cycle here at home. And the grasses that grow on the sandy Florida soils aren't the nutrient-rich grass that's going to help them gain weight quickly. So some of them are going up to the panhandle where you have the clay soils and having a different ranch property there. And then they feed the cattle more protein-rich foods and legumes that they can grow, and they go eat them straight off the grass, and then they're slaughtering them locally. And you can do that, and there are health conscious people or certain restaurants or certain who create a demand for that more premium, low environmental footprint, probably healthier food product, but it's just not mainstream yet.
Right. How many ranches are doing it this way in Florida that you're aware of?
Not very many.
No.
I mean, most of it, including my own family, is shipping the cows, selling your calves at the market, and they go to the feedlot. There is a group of ranchers called Florida cattle ranchers who are kind of doing a hybrid where they're not naturally grazing grass through their whole life, but they're feeding them grain and other things that are at least grown in the state of Florida. Mm-hmm. So up around Chiefland, there's some feedlots where they're, growing corn in the state of Florida, feeding the cow in the state of Florida. So it keeps it a little closer to home.
Now, I know it's like this in fishing, but I don't know if it's like this in cattle ranching. But there's no way that like an outside investment company portfolio could buy a cattle ranch, right, and then put people in there to run it in Florida and like sit in their high rise in Manhattan and trade it like stock.
No, I'm pretty sure there are at least a few ranches I know of that are owned by out-of-state entities.
Oh, really? Okay.
And they hire local crews to run their cows. So
there's no laws that you have to be owned and operated, like the people that are running it have to live there, like hands-on?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
But most often those are real estate plays. Like the people who are buying these, and the thing is, it's really hard to keep owning a ranch. Like if you're a generational family who has a ranch, first your family grows, and the probability of having everyone from the next generation interested in ranching versus having the paycheck that could come from selling the land, to even keep enough consensus generation to generation to keep the land is a big battle.
Yeah.
And then you enter the estate tax. And so if your ranch is worth something more than the estate tax threshold, you've got to sell off some of the land to meet the tax obligations of the passing of each generation. And so there are a lot of pressures that are pushing these bigger ranches into smaller and smaller pieces. And the people waiting on the sidelines to buy a ranch aren't other ranchers, it's developers.
Real estate people, yeah. God.
And that's what my motivation in all of this has been, conservation. Mm-hmm. And that's really the solution, where state programs like the Rural and Family Lands Protection Program or the Florida Forever Program can buy the development rights from the rancher. And so every one of these ranches, even the one we're looking at here, this is Horse Creek Ranch in Hardee and DeSoto County, they have a development density of, say, one house in 5 acres. That's part of their rights in owning that land. They could develop it at a certain density. Mm-hmm. And so you can't tell someone, oh, you can't develop your land. That'd be taking away value from them. But if they're open to it, you can pay them for those development rights, take the development rights away. They keep owning the land as an agricultural property in perpetuity, but it'll never be developed.
And who pays them for that?
It's often state programs or federal programs, sometimes land trusts like the Nature Conservancy.
Right.
But the biggest programs in Florida are either out of our Department of Environmental Protection or our Department of Agriculture.
Okay. That makes sense.
And I think it's one of the most cost-effective ways to save landscapes.
Yeah.
Because when the state comes in to buy, we need public lands. We have a growing population, and state parks are widely utilized, and there's a real case for public lands for hunting or recreation. But we can't afford, nor should we spend all state dollars to buy all these lands when you can spend a fraction of what it would cost to buy it to buy the development rights. And,
Right.
and then it stays protected.
Right.
And it stays in production and stays on the tax roll.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So of all the land that's being protected in Florida now, I'd say 70 or 80% of it is through conservation easements versus buying the land outright.
Wow. That's
In
incredible.
terms of acres.